Okay, so the point of this interview is to discuss the nature of development and improvement as an artist along the life journey of a student all the way to a master. So we've interviewed one master and we've got a young master in the making, which is Cristo Harijan. And you're still technically a student, but you're in your final years of study, I guess we could say that. And you're already concertizing. So my first question is I want to take you back to your student years and ask you how you became
Okay.
you are. So you studied at Cheetham School of Music, you studied at the Royal Northern College of Music, and now you're at Paris. So are
Hmm.
there particular musical memories of insight which stand out to you, which helped you and directed you onto the path that you're on now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there weren't so much singular moments that happened during my studies, but there were, so to speak, recurring themes that over a period of time coagulated into an insight on myself. It's like I had to be told certain things over and over again by different teachers to realize like, oh, this is a valid perspective. So for example, I played to Stephen Huff, I think twice in his piano clinics at Cheatham's. And the first time I played to him, it was with the Chopin Etude, Opus 10, number 4. We all know it very well. Um, and right before that, I'd remembered feeling not a sense of nervousness, but an extreme sense of excitement and inspiration that just kind of took over me before I went on to play to him. And I played the coda, um, and it went really well. And he said, it doesn't seem like there's really any problems with this. and he talked a little bit about wrist rotation and stuff, but he was like, yeah, just kind of believe in it. And the second time I played to him at Cheatham's, it was with another Chopin etude, the Opus 25, number 6, thirds etude. I also played the ending of that, and it was the opposite result. It was pretty terrible. I felt awfully nervous about playing this etude in front of him, but he kind of said basically the same thing. He was like, yeah, you've just got to practice it till you believe in it. And then he played the passage which I was struggling with, with real ease and fluidity and strength of the fingers. And
uh,
I got really humbled that day, but the message was the same. And another example. So my teacher, um, at the end of my time at Cheatham's and then my entire time at the RNCM, Murray McLaughlin, he would always say something to me, which was that I I needed to keep some of my ability in reserve, and that I tried to play things too fast and flew too close to the sun, as he put it. And my teacher in Paris has been saying pretty much the same thing. Make it spacious, make sure that you're aware of everything and that nothing's running away from you, and don't make it about your ego. I think being an orchestra as a pianist, that's the message. So yeah, those are just some different things, some recurring motifs.
so were there any particular obstacles or challenges that you remember facing during your years of study, and how did you overcome them?
I think that, yeah, definitely. But I mean, they were challenges that I kind of created for myself, but definitely doing something like lifting at the gym as well as practicing the piano, the two didn't gel together too well at certain points. Like if I was working out 5 times a week, which I don't do that anymore, but my arms would get super stiff and tense. And because I already had a problem with tension while I was playing the piano, this of course just made it only worse. So that was kind of a big obstacle I had to overcome, and learning how to balance these two things that I really wanted to do. And, another thing that I wanted to do was train boxing. But of course, that it's quite unthinkable because the chances that you're going to get an injury over a long period of time are just way too high. So I had to give that up. So it's sort of just, I think, learning how to balance your energy and not spread yourself too thinly that's definitely a major challenge.
Do you think you just learned that through the practicality of doing it and sort of trial and error, or were there any moments that sort of stuck out to you as like, oh, okay, I realized that this is the way I've got to do it from now on?
Yeah, I mean, it was, I'm still learning it, to be honest. Yeah, it's a lifelong process. But eventually you kind of uh, understand your larger cycles as a human and the way your energy and your motivation works and how you can sort of align everything to make it as smooth as possible so that you don't have extreme peaks and extreme lows in life.
Right, makes sense. So, what was your approach to building repertoire then?
What do you mean?
So, how did you build your repertoire? How did you go about doing it? Was it structured like you had a roadmap of like, okay, I want to do this piece, and then I'm planning on maybe completing that cycle, and then I'll do this, or was it more spontaneous? Or what was your approach, and why as well did you learn these pieces?
Well, I think it's always kind of been I find a certain composer that I really like, and then I'll just play that composer for a period of time. So, I mean, it was Chopin for a long time. I just wanted to play Chopin, ballades, scherzos, etudes, everything Chopin. Um, and then Rachmaninoff for a long time at the RNCM, Rachmaninoff, and now Liszt. Although I'm playing a more balanced repertoire now, but it's generally been I just want to really dive into these composers' worlds and get as much of a rounded perspective on them as possible and try and integrate that with my own self. Um, and I don't think I consciously was choosing to do that. It's just kind of the way that I chose to do it.
Nice. So, how do you practice now, or how is your practice developed over the years, would you say?
Um, it's just the amount that you listen. And I don't mean listen to what's coming out, but try to listen to what's really there in your mind, your musical intuition. Because when we're just at the piano all the time, we can get distracted by the noise. So one thing that I've implemented a lot more recently is the idea of mental practicing, just feeling the music, listening to the music, but only in your mind. Maybe doing certain movements with your body or singing phrases, but just practicing away from the piano, fully integrating this music into yourself. I found that really helpful for gaining a larger vision of the music and not being hemmed in by notes and small sections that, we might have technical difficulties with. A lot of the times we're having difficulties because we're too zoomed in and we're not seeing this place in the context of a larger piece.
Right. And how do you go about getting toward your vision? So, say if you mentally practice for a while and you have this vision in your mind, you can feel it. How do you go about reaching that?
Oh, it's dreadfully simple. I I just play it really, really slowly and try and make all my movements very correct and make sure that the sound is clear on every single note. And then I just try and speed it up. And
Yeah.
I guess there's other practice techniques, but I don't want to bore you with that. We all know the different kinds of practice techniques, but I think that when I really think about it, slow practice is when it's done right is probably the most effective.
Mm, mm, for sure. Okay, so let's talk about where you're at now. So, how do you approach
Hmm.
your studies being abroad? And what would you say the differences are of being in Paris as opposed to being in the UK, which you've been for the previous part of your studies and life?
Well, there was a lot of differences for me starting at this conservatoire. I don't know if this is to do with the conservatoire that I went to. I don't know how the École Normale is different from the Paris Conservatoire, for example. I expect it's quite different. But I mean, specifically with the conservatoire, I found it very difficult to get practice rooms. Whereas in the UK, I didn't realize how spoiled I was for all those years. And Um, I don't know. There's a slightly different mindset, I think, in the European conservatoires, um, where I feel that your entire value as a musician to other students is perceived initially by who your teacher is, who your professor is. So that'll be the only question that they ask you is who's your professor? And then you'll give them their answer. They go, "Oh, I know him," or "Oh, I don't really know him. No, I don't think." Or some of the very rude ones will be like, "Oh, yes, but isn't he not very good? Or doesn't he have not very good students or something?" And it's like, okay, well, this is it's just a slightly different mindset.
Right.
But overall, I can't say it's that different.
So would you say there's any different perspectives that you gained on certain composers or certain pieces or any kind of musical changes that you feel being in a different place?
Um, Certainly, um, in French composers, I feel my current teacher, yeah, you can just tell when somebody deeply feels the music, not just in a musical way, but as part of their culture, as part of their spirit. And I think when that is conveyed to you in a lesson, it endows you with this sort of different understanding that maybe only a French teacher could give you, or someone who has just assimilated that mode of being that's present in the music. The subtleties of it, I feel, are lost on so many. But again, it's an intangible thing that I'm trying to describe.
Right. Do you think that that could be achieved through the kind of practice that you were talking about earlier, the mental practice, just the feeling, the vision, imagining it? Do you think it's something that can be achieved that way, or do you think it's something that you just have to experience first?
Well, again, if you existed only in a vacuum with your scores around you, I don't think you'd have any real knowledge of what the notes on the paper meant.
Right.
So certainly, um, experience is a value, and I think the more experience that we have in life of different perspectives and ways of life that initially seem alien to us, the more perspective, of course, we can have on the music.
Do you think that that's something that the composer actually put into the work themselves, or do you think it's something that, say, in the example that you gave of your teacher brought to it, or do you think that it's something different entirely? Like, where do you think that comes from?
I think that in the music existing in its ultimate form, shall we say, I don't want to get too metaphysical here, but there is an ultimate form of each piece, and that is the closer that you get to this, the more obvious uh, that form is. And so I think that if we're talking ethnically, somebody who was ethnically closer to a composer would just naturally be closer to that ultimate form merely by what they were, because the composer was that, and the music is the composer. It's an extension of the composer.
Wow.
So,
So,
in a sense, it's both.
hmm, hmm, fascinating. So, how do you prepare for your concerts that you have now? So, when you have a program to prepare, how do you go about working on it?
Hmm. Well, I don't know if there's anything that I really do differently. I mean, recent recitals I've done, I haven't even run my programs through. I've sort of just gone into it blind, but there's something exciting in that. I don't know. Of course, I go through each piece and try to make sure that everything's in place and that I'm seeing everything, but there's only so much you can do, and then you're stepping on stage and yeah, you're there.
Yeah. Do you see the concert as an experience as a whole that you're trying to craft in the practice room, or do you just see it as like you're practicing the individual pieces and then you're going on stage and it's sort of just happening then, like the experience is just unfolding?
Well, I do have a vision for the program as a whole. So I try to design it in a way where it'll make sense and there'll be some kind of journey. But generally, I wouldn't. play through a whole program as practice for a concert. I don't know. I just feel it can be sometimes disheartening. And I want what happens in the concert to be what happens. I don't want to have an expectation for that. I don't know. It's very situation dependent.
Mm-hmm. Great. So let's talk about your future ambitions. So, do you have any particular musical goals that you have that you'd like to achieve?
As in with repertoire concerts.
Yeah, and also with your life and the journey forward in general. So, anything that you haven't achieved yet that you would like to in any aspect.
Oh, many things,
Yeah.
many things. Probably too many to name. Um, of course, just to perform more and more often and in more prestigious venues and with orchestras and chamber ensembles and whatnot. Um, and teach. I have a great desire to teach and to give master classes. Um, yeah,
What
I
about
guess
certain
that's
composers? Is there any music that you
certain
want to achieve
composers.
you haven't looked into?
Yeah, well, certainly pieces by Godowsky, like the Passacaglia, I'm very interested in delving into and relatively unplayed. But also the late sonatas of Schubert, I think, are some of the greatest, most transcendent pieces ever written. Um, and I have sort of tentatively looked into them, but it's stylistically still so far from what I'm used to. But I feel that I'm slowly coming to that world. Um, and I'm very excited to get there.
Nice, nice. Which one of you is your favorite out of the three? The final three of Schubert.
The C minor or the A major or B flat. Well, it's difficult to say. I think I hold the A major and the B flat major in equal regard, just because I think I couldn't choose between them.
Hmm.
But if I had to, I'd choose the B flat.
Yeah. Uh, so this is more of an open question, the final question. So what would your key message be to young people that are still studying? So say if you put yourself back to when you were, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old, when you were just starting to study in an institution, what advice would you give?
Don't just sit at the piano all day and think that that's going to make you better. Do the mental practice, you know, formulate your vision of the music. Think more about what this music is. What is really the meaning of it? What's it pointing towards? Something greater than just, I don't know, notes in the air that can be abstract and meaningless. There's something the composer was trying to say. And it's something that you, as a human, are innately able to understand if you're introspective enough. So I think look more towards what's beyond and don't just think of it as some kind of formulaic process.
Fantastic. Thank you. All
My
right. Well,
pleasure.
wish you all the best. I'm sure we'll speak
Thanks
again.
very much.
Thanks for doing this.
All right. Talk soon.
Thank you.